Great. Hi, Karen. So welcome everybody to this regular Heart of Thriving group Zoom call, and delighted that you're all here. Could I ask that you all mute yourselves unless you're speaking, just to keep the background noise to a minimum? Thank you very much. And this call will be recorded and it'll be up on YouTube, because I know a lot of people wanted to come who couldn't make the time. And apologies from Mary Franklin Smith, who was going to be my guest, and very sadly she's very poorly with tonsillitis, but we will be rescheduling that call as soon as she's better. And we're very fortunate to have been joined by two guests, so I'm delighted that Rebecca and Giles are joining us. And this is a call with the theme of the three principles and health. So both Rebecca and Giles are going to speak to that. And let me just very quickly introduce them both. So Rebecca is a wellbeing and resilience coach. She's seen firsthand profound changes in herself and her family, as well as deep transformation for her clients as she's deepened her understanding of how that well-being and resilience are innate in all of us. She's the published author of highly rated titles, including Best Knickers Always, 50 Lessons for Midlife, I still love that title, and Recovery from Within, a mother and daughter's journey through anorexia. Rebecca and Bea, her daughter, have been on a transformative journey through anorexia to recovery. And now share this understanding with all sorts of people, including those struggling with anxiety, panic attacks, addictions, and eating disorders, as well as those caring for them, and pointing them to the source of our well-being. Dr. Giles Croft is a psychology graduate and former NHS doctor who trained as a surgeon before stepping out of clinical practice in 2003 to pursue various career adventures, including operating as an NHS data geek, riding and writing for his favourite cycling magazine, opening a wool shop with his wife, and becoming a keynote speaker on the topic of career change. Having trained as a coach, he's now come full circle and is working back in the healing profession. Only this time the focus of his practice is much further upstream on the root cause of all symptoms and experiences. So welcome to both of you, and thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to ask Rebecca to kick off by sharing a bit of her experience, and then Giles may come in as well, and then we'll have at least half the time of this hour for you guys to come in and share experiences, ask questions, and just go into a kind of a general conversation about it all. So Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you, Kim, and hello everybody. Some faces I do know. And I'm absolutely delighted to step in for Mary so she can fully recover. So I guess there was life before the principles and life afterwards. And health, mental health has always been something that's been kind of intriguing and also very important for me in my own journey, my own life journey. I suffered probably, actually, if I work it out, about 10 years of my life, I'm 56 now, 10 years of my life where I was being treated for some sort of depression. And yeah, have had times of real struggle in my life where it felt like a big black hole that I was in. Had a number of different talking therapies, but always felt there was something missing. And I think that's been the story for me when I then trained as a coach about 13 years ago. NLP was my route. It worked, it helped, but it was effortful. And then it wasn't until 3.5 years ago, I think, that I met Kim. Is it 3.5 years? I think it must be something like that. Anyway, where the moment that Kim started talking, I remember just feeling that I'd come home. Literally, it was like that. And I remember saying to Kim, this is the missing link. This is the missing link. And not understanding why she was laughing until you, I think, went to your bookshelf and pulled out a copy of Sid Banks' The Missing Link. And it was like, oh, this makes sense. And it was literally for me like years of effort started to fall away. And I saw immediate a kind of an opening up, I think, in my own well-being. And I hadn't been clinically diagnosed for quite a few years, but there was still this anxiety around situations, and was it going to trigger something, and was I ever going to experience it again, etc., etc. And then when I saw something so deeply profound for me in the understanding of the principles, that I knew that I was fine. On a very deep level, that I was fine. And almost actually looking back with hindsight, the beauty of hindsight, being able to make sense of it all as well, and seeing where my wisdom was absolutely showing itself and where I was caught up and where I had blind spots. And it was almost like a running through of back in the day, even from as a teenager. Oh, that makes sense now. Oh, yeah. Oh, that makes sense now. And there was a freeing up for me in that. And I just felt that any life circumstance could come my way, and I knew I'd be able to deal with it. Not what came into my mind was the wonderful George Pransky saying, with grace and ease, but actually, or maybe not, but I knew that it wasn't defining who I was. Yeah. And that was really important for me.
Yeah.
And as I know a lot of people who've got children and teenagers, and mine were a bit older, in their 20s, as soon as I knew this and had an understanding of this, I was evangelizing. And they were saying to me, will you stop it, Mum? And I think for me, what I saw, so before I go into more details about my daughter, what I was seeing, that this might help with her anxiety. And slowly, yes, it did. But what I had never considered was part of my own blind spot, was how this might help with her recovery from anorexia. Because B had been diagnosed with anorexia in 2008, and it had been part of our life since then, to a greater or lesser degree, depending on where she was and where I was. But it always looked like this was something that we would live with forever, that this was something that she would have to manage, and me as her hands-off carer by this point would have to manage. And it was such a blind spot. And that was what was the most intriguing thing about it in hindsight, was that I didn't even see it, because it was I was complicit in the behaviors without even realizing that's what was going on. Walking on eggshells was so part of life that I didn't even notice it. Mm. And that came to light when I met Mary Franklin Smith on one of Kim's retreats, and she was interested to meet B. So we set up a Zoom call like this. And I remember having palpitations because I was thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because I still was of the belief that something I said or something somebody else said could trigger it again. Okay, so it was a blind spot. I didn't see it. You don't see it, you don't know it.
So by this stage, sorry, Rebecca, she was kind of managing it and functioning.
Yeah.
But still kind of, it was still an issue.
It was still an issue. So she was weight restored after a few years, but mentally she was still living with anorexia. We were all still living with anorexia. So for example, if she was coming home from university for the weekend, I would be thinking, what can I cook? Oh, I better not do that. No, she won't eat that. And compromising all the way. But it was like, yeah, but that's fine. That's kind of what we do. Okay, so it was in this. So B was working by this point. She's 26 now. So this was a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, maybe. She had the conversation with Mary, and I remember B describing in detail her blacklist. So foods that she just wouldn't eat, and justifying them in a very coherent and rational way. You know, it's fine. They're just these foods, I don't eat them, and but that's fine. And it's and I remember Mary just stopping and just saying, "Stop, B. Can I just say something here? You do know that's made up, don't you?" And I remember feeling physically sick that she'd said it. Mary had said it. She'd voiced what I'd been too frightened to voice for years. And it was so interesting. The look on B's face was one of, when you see somebody's had an insight?
Yeah.
And it was like there was silence. And I didn't know which way this was going to go. And then it dawned on her. It dawned on her. And the conversation carried on. And then literally over the space of, it wasn't an overnight, and she wasn't then straight into down the chip shop to go and get, fish and chips or anything like that. But there was this, over a matter of weeks, there was, so if I made it up, then that means nothing's off limits. And to see my daughter rediscover her health was absolutely extraordinary and beautiful, and it's so thrilling. It's so funny. It's like she would text me and say, smoked salmon and cream cheese sandwiches. Who knew? And I'd just be weeping I'm glad I wasn't on the phone with her. I was weeping. Pizza, all the stuff that she'd made up.
Yeah.
That she couldn't eat. So it became obvious for us that we needed to share this. And that we just grew in our own understanding. Her understanding deepened, mine was deepening even more. And it seemed so natural for us to write about our experiences, which we did in our book, which we published at the end of the year. And since then, the deepening for both of us has just grown. And for us now to share what we've seen, most of my work now is with young people, yes, some young people, but some people that are, I'm working with a lady at the moment who's had an eating disorder for 40 years. Okay. And this whole beautiful Sid Banks quote about we have the best job in the world, sitting with somebody once we tap them on the shoulder as they wake up to the full magnificence of life. And I'm sure I've got that completely wrong, but you get the essence of it, that just pointing people to their health that's there and to help them see the stories that they've created innocently about their illness, their mental illness, their eating disorder, and just to watch as they wake up to that.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful book. I can't recommend it highly enough. So I'll put it in the notes under the recording if you would like to pick up a copy. And it's lovely because it's Rebecca writes one chapter and then B would write the next chapter, and then they kind of alternate. But it's full of wisdom. Thank you very much, Giles. Do you want to come in at that point at all about anything that's occurring to you about innate health?
that I loved hearing that story, Rebecca. I've not heard it before, and it was beautiful. Thank you. And hello, everybody. You talking about blind spots, and my blind spot, my health-related blind spot, was about taking the principles back into the NHS, because I've been outside of the NHS for so long that it's funny, that whole thing you say about you just kind of like bimbling along in a particular way, a habit, and you just don't really think about it, do you? And so in my head, I'd always had this idea of myself as the guy who people went to if they wanted to leave the NHS, because that's what I'd done. And then after all that, when I discovered the 3 principles, it's like, oh my God, this is like rocket fuel, isn't it, for change? You know, like, it's going to be even easier to help people leave. And so it never entered into my head to actually go back into the NHS until I heard an interview between Jamie Smart and Louise O'Delague. Probably pronounced that wrong. Apologies, Louise, if you're watching this. And she works in the NHS. She's sharing the principles in the NHS. I just started to think, oh gosh. And then I saw Mary post something on Twitter, and I'd never met Mary before, and she posted something and was saying that, you know, that they're using the principles up in Leeds in the eating disorder clinic there, and it was like, oh gosh, yes, why did I not see this before? Gosh. And, you know, I met Kim at the 3 Principles conference this year, and she was witness to me rather foolishly just standing up in front of the whole audience and telling them I wanted to transform the NHS. So yeah, blind spots, easily missed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've been talking so far about mental health, and I know we've got another person on the call, Karen, who's doing lots of great work, sharing the principles with under kind of mind mental health. But I wanted to ask you, and I'd love you to talk about that, Karen, if you want to. But I want to ask you, Giles, like when we take it to physical health as opposed to mental health, I guess people ask that a lot of you. I get a lot of clients asking me at the beginning of their understanding, especially, yes, but this is a physical problem. And what have the principles got to do with that?
Well, I have no experience of, like, my life as a surgeon was like 15 years before the principles were ever a thing. And if somebody had come and told me what I know now, I'd have been like, really? So in my work, you know, I'm not taking people out into the hills and performing surgery on them, God no. But and it's funny, isn't it, because surgery, it's like, if your knees are worn out and you need a knee replacement, then you need a knee replacement. But when I talk about going upstream and looking at the root cause of symptoms, what I'm interested in is people's experience of whatever physical illness they're having. Because I'm sure there's a huge mental component to it all. And I'm relatively new to the principles. It's only it's less than a year since I came across them, and it's always easier to kind of, because it's such a, you know, mental thing. It's easier to think about the mental symptoms, if you like. But I'm a big walker, and I did a big organised walk in the summer. I did the walk across Wales. It's 42 miles, which is way further than I've ever walked in my life. We set off at 3 a.m. we bust out to the start, and I think I'd done about 30 odd miles before, but 42 was well beyond. And physically, I started to fall apart at about 33, 34 miles. It started, you know, my feet were in terrible blisters and like really, and I noticed myself getting more and more withdrawn. I was with a friend. We've got he's like my best mate from uni. We've got a really good relationship. We're comfortable with silence, but I knew that this was too much silence. I'd gone mute because I was in my head. It wasn't just that my feet were hurting and my legs were hurting. I was suffering. I was really, really suffering. And I caught myself and I thought, hang on, Giles, you know a thing or two about this. So how am I gonna, you know, what would I? And so I was, I was experiencing the pain, and I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, you know, there it is. I'm experiencing the pain. Like, the pain's not me. Yeah, sure, it's all happening to my body. Yeah, I can't deny it. But that experience of the pain is being mediated via thought. It's coming via thought. That, I mean, we know that, you know, you can give birth under, you can have a cesarean section under hypnosis, so without any pain, you know, medication at all. So just seeing that in that moment just allowed me to fall out of my thinking for long enough to get some fresh thinking in there. And my fresh thinking was, well, if this was, you know, my 5-year-old daughter that I was out walking with and she was whinging away like I am to my mate about how much everything hurts, what would I do? And well, we'd sing a song, wouldn't we? You know, we'd be singing songs by now. And I was like, why don't I just sing a song? So thankfully there weren't too many other walkers around, but I just started belting out songs at the top of my voice. And for you know, good half hour, 3/4 of an hour, my experience, pain hadn't changed. It was getting worse, if anything, as I went further. But my experience of that pain changed drastically. So when we talk about physical health, it's like, well, the whole thing's an experience. The whole thing's an experience, and who knows how much of that experience is well, we know the whole thing's coming through thought, but for each individual, you know, let's take that out of the equation, shall we? You know, let's help there, shall we? It's like,
no, I love this. I love the singing thing because you know, it's no accident that armies for centuries have done that as they march. You know,
there it is.
But you know, even more than yes, there are some things that break down and, you know, like the knees have to be repaired and so on. But I know there's a lot of people in this understanding and other traditions who believe, without laying any blame or judgment on it, that it's actually chronic stress that's creating a lot of the disease in the first place. So, you know, by creating so much of so the body's constantly in fight or flight, constantly in that kind of adrenaline, cortisol place, which just isn't good for us. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so raise a hand if you'd like to say something, share, ask a question, or just kind of give your point of view on all of this. Yeah, Mira.
Hey, I might as well introduce myself. I'm really glad to be listening to all this. I've got experience of both. I had eating disorder due to stress and huge loss in my life. I guess that's what triggered it. And I've been a physiotherapist specialized in pain management for many, many, many years in the past. Went out of it thinking that my stress was coming from my clients because they were annoying. They just could not understand. Well, it's funny looking back at it. But yeah, I mean, all our experience of pain comes from our thinking. And it's not the pain that it's problem, it's suffering that it's problem. And you know what really is interesting to me is that there are people that just live with understanding of that whole their life, that have been experiencing pain for whole their life, and they just didn't suffer.
Yeah.
And then there are people that just don't know that. And this is where my struggle used to be, is how do I explain those people that suffering is optional?
Mm.
And I guess this is where my frustration was. But yeah, today I see it very, very differently. But yeah, maybe I go back and do some physiotherapy. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, today I do something different. But yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, and I think just with a little headache, any one of us can. I remember not long ago, I had the flu and I had a really, really bad headache, couldn't sleep, tossing, turning, being really pissed off at myself for whatever reason. And as soon as I acknowledged that, my headache gone away. Physical pain had gone away. So that's the little bit of experience.
Yeah. And what are you up to in the world these days, Mira?
Well, I'm coaching and I'm doing some leadership training. And it's all related in a way. But yeah, after being a physiotherapist, I went into managing and setting up a clinic myself. And this is where, from there, I went into leadership and coaching, doing that. But there's still lots of connections, I feel. And what I'm trying to do now is do stress management in medical organizations. And hence me being on this call, because we had a conversation about it, Giles, didn't we? And yeah, that's something that keeps on showing up for me. Because I think that we, as people that work with people that are in pain, like looking at myself then, if I knew what I know now, I could have probably helped much more people, be less stressed out, and maybe, I mean, I don't know where life takes you, but maybe I would still be doing it happily. It's, I mean, I don't know what's your experience of leaving a medical profession, but I would imagine there was a lots of stress. And my surprise is, you know, big corporates have regular discussions about stress and talking about, I mean, you look at Google and all of those companies, but hospitals, yeah, funny, yeah.
Yeah, that's the that's the work I started doing recently. I had the good fortune to end up coaching a junior doctor locally here in Abergavenny, and she was super stressed and was thinking about changing specialty, because she was a paediatrician in acute specialty and was a fairly new registrar and wasn't coping with the pressure, and was thinking of either leaving or changing to different specialty, something a little less acute workload. And we went out and we did some work together, and she's had the most profound transformation. It's been beautiful to watch, and just like skips happily into work these days and was like, "You've got to come and talk to my department." And in fact, it was on the basis of that she was looking for ways to alleviate the stress in her department, because everyone was like just tearing their hair out. And so they had regular Wednesday lunchtime meetings. And so on a Wednesday, she rebranded them. Her and another registrar rebranded them Wellbeing Wednesdays, and were doing everything that they could. Like they got someone in to do some mindfulness one time, and then they had like massage another time and stuff. And I bumped into her at a kid's party because her daughter goes to the same school as mine, and she was telling me about this. And I said, would you like me to come and talk sometime? She's like, yes. I said, do you know what I do? She's like, no. So I said, well, I will come and speak, but on the understanding that you and I spend some time together first. So at least you know what you're letting yourself in for. So I do locally, I do all my coaching outdoors. I take people out walking into the hills here in Abergavenny. And so between the two of us, so she's in the evangelical phase at the moment, which is brilliant, and so between the two of us, we've been running sessions on Wednesdays. So we've just done our fourth, and I just go in and we try something different every time, just totally make it up as we're going along. I tell them, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'd never dream of doing something like this in the past, but every time I think I'm getting stressed about, you guys sat there with looks on your face like this. I know it's coming from me, not you. So and we've had some. It's been fascinating. It's been such a learning exercise, and I think the biggest learning point is like that method of delivery is really hard, because it's a real they're all on shift work and stuff, so it's never the same people every time. So you can't build. It's not like a course that you can build or anything. So have to find a different way of kind of recapping, giving them a really short soundbite of this is where we're coming from in this stuff, before then tackling whatever it is whatever subject we're going to tackle. And I mean, I've not got I'm quite used to standing up on stage and telling people stuff, but kind of facilitating groups I don't have as much experience in, so that's been a huge learning curve for me. But some people have seen some really positive changes, so we've quickly adopted our catchphrase has been light one candle, because if we can, because like the head nurse is reading Rani Bora's book, How to Turn Stress on Its Head, and she's always in every session, and she always asks. And the other week when I was really floundering, I was late, and so I was up in my head about that, and I couldn't stop thinking about what a shit facilitator I was, and so understandably the session didn't go all that well, but it was great because there were other people in the audience in the group were kind of jumping to my aid. When I was getting some resistance from somebody in the audience who basically accused me of talking nonsense, they just stepped in and hang on a minute, well, how about you think about it like this? So yeah, it's very early days, and I don't know where it's going. But we've just, in fact, today I do know where it's going, because today I've been round the house of the registrar, and we've been creating some little impact videos. So we want to put together one of those kind of like 4 or 5 minute little video things of talking heads, a lot of people who people in the NHS with NHS experience who like Rebecca said, life before, life after. I used to think this, silly me, kind of stuff. So that's what we're, so that we've got something to hang it on, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, if you need any more people for that, I'm sure you're well networked up by now, but do shout. There's quite a few people, including lots of GPs actually that I know that have been through my retreats and things, so I can put you in touch.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Thank you, Giles. So who else? Over to you. Just stick your hand up or unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get Giles to sing you a song. Or who's got a question? Yeah, Mira.
I've got a question. Oh, I'm quite talkative tonight. Maybe it's because it's almost 10 o'clock here where I am. I actually have a question. How do you, like, I think going back to, I think I have lots of my own thinking about what's possible in medical institutions. You know, they won't understand. They will compare it with psychology. They'll say this is stupid, you know. And I think, so there is a thing that I'm actually looking and doing proposals to do some work in Iraq with NGOs and in some hospitals over there. So with people that are under constant trauma, and partly, you know, my inclination to do that is because I've been in war myself when I was a kid. But you know, there's this discomfort of thinking, oh, they will just, you know, they are in such horrible situation, and me coming over there telling them, you know, it's all your thinking. Obviously, I wouldn't say that, but it frightens me. Anybody, you know, do you have any suggestions of how to deal with that, or not? I guess I have my answer anyway.
I know. I had massive, and still do, imposter syndrome going into these situations because I left. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, who the hell am I to tell people that this is, you know, this is what's going on for them when I didn't even stick it out. But everyone's human, Mira. Everyone's human, and it's I just keep holding on to the fact that, you know, we're not talking rot here. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. And you'd be amazed. I know I've talked to Mary about this at great length. And she says that the doctors are actually the easiest ones because they've never really thought about it. And you let them, you know, you just drip feed them a little bit, and they're like, oh, in fact, yeah, this latest session, we had one of the new registrars, and he came up at the end of the session, and he was like, oh, I'm totally on board with all of that. I totally agree with it all. Yes, it makes total sense. Now, what do I do? Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. So yeah, I had to sort of gently guide him through, you know. Well,
no, I think that's really great, and I'm always getting surprised as well at so I mean, what I would offer is a couple of things, Mira. One is I am always so inspired in a way by people all around the world who are sharing this understanding, like in the worst, you know, what I would think of as the worst possible circumstances with refugees, in conflict situations, you know, in the Middle East, and people who've just suffered kind of, you know, a huge earthquake or you know, a fire that's destroyed their home or whatever it is. And so that kind of puts it in perspective for me when I'm thinking about some of the people that I'm sharing with, because although they're often having their own personal suffering that looks completely real, I'm just so buoyed up by the international community of people and what they're doing and what they're achieving. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I've seen so deeply for myself is, and I don't mean to say to you, it's just your thinking, Mira.
Yeah, I know, it's a funny one, isn't it?
It is, and it's insecure thinking, and that's all it is. We all have that from time to time. And what I've seen is there's no useful intelligence in that.
Yeah.
You know, there's no juice in there. There's no gold in there. And the more I see that as insecure thought, which is transient, and so more and more, I really only pay attention to. It's still thought, but the stuff that that seems to me to be coming from wisdom or mind or, that intelligence behind life. And I know it's coming from there because it feels completely different. It feels fresh, it feels new, it feels light, it feels right. So anything that, like I always say to people, the universe doesn't think you suck. Right, so any thinking that's of that ilk is just, egoic, insecure, passing rubbish, really.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm still going with it. I'm not.
Yeah,
it didn't stop me yet. No. But yeah, it's really it's always good to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're really welcome. And thank you for all that you do and will be doing.
Yeah.
You can sort of, you can kind of like tell tales on yourself as well. And this is one that Jamie's always talking about, isn't it, Kim? Like you can, in these situations, you can tell tales on yourself. And so like when I go along to one of these sessions, I'll take a snow globe with me. And if I get into a situation where I'm just like digging myself into a hole and I've got all these blank faces, I can go and grab the snow globe and I can just stand there shaking it for a bit. It's like you're probably wondering what I'm doing. Well, I know, and it just takes that shift. It just takes that shift in yourself to then give you that space. Again, for me, it's always about just coming down out of here just for long enough for something else to come through. I'm totally with you, Kim. It's like there's no room, there's no juice in there. I think of it like static. There's just like so much static on the line that even if there was a message, you wouldn't be able to hear it. And I don't know, just for seeing me just having a few little things that I know I can do. And even sometimes, the thought of, well, I could go over there and shake the snow globe, and that's enough for me to just, slow down. Slowing down's good as well. Slowing down's good. Just, and like the difference in two sessions, like a bad session and a good session. In a bad session, any bit of silence, I feel like I have to fill. It's just like this going on in my head, and the difference between that and a good set. I mean, like this latest session, I just turned up really bright and breezy, and I ran out of things to say, and I just found myself sort of draped over a flip chart, not saying anything, and I looked around the room, and everyone seemed quite happy, and it's like, yeah, this is fine. This is what I've come for, really. To show them that this is where the goodies are, in the silence. So I don't know if any of that helps.
Thank you, Mira.
Definitely, yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned that silence. Yeah.
So we've just got about 10 minutes or so left. So still a chance to share something if you'd like, or we can just...
Hi, I've got a question.
Yeah, Karina.
Hi there. Hi, Rebecca. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about work that you've done with children. Yeah, how open they are to talking about it. Is it the parents that sort of are keen for you to work with them?
Hi, Karina. Yes, absolutely. I think what's interesting, so a lot of my clients have come through the BEAT website, so the eating disorder website. That's the absolutely fantastic charity, and my details are there on their help finder. So that's one way that I kind of start working with people. I think it's usually, I mean, it's not all the time, but usually if they're younger people, so teens, that it comes via the parents, and often because they're struggling with the NHS CAMS, because either they've not been, well, as is a big problem, their BMI isn't low enough. So the parents can know there's something wrong, but they're not able to access help through the NHS. Or they're finding that they're not getting anywhere with the type of support that they're getting through the counselling services they're getting. And I will always have a conversation with the parents first. For example, if they've contacted me, left me a message, then let's hop on a call and let me explain how I work. I mean, there are details on the website, as in the BEAT website. So I think they already know that this is a bit different. And I think the thing I love is that even the wisdom then of the parents, it's like there's a feeling that I'm getting from the words that have been written down here, and I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt I needed to get on the phone with you, is what parents have said. And we'll have a conversation, and I would be absolutely upfront. I'm not interested in their eating plan. I'm not interested in where this came from, may or may not have started. And I'll be upfront and say this is different. And we might sit outside, we might sit on the beach, we might sit curled up on my sofa. I'm interested in, as Giles says, going upstream with them and explain a bit about what that is. And I talk about transformative conversation. And sometimes if we're doing a Zoom or something like that, then the young person will come on. I can see them out of shot just about. And then they might just poke their head round to say hello. And then I'll speak to them. Does this make sense? Is this something that you feel you'd like to explore? And usually it's yes. Sometimes it's just a silent nod of the head. And then they come and they sit in my living room, for example, and very quickly, very, very quickly, they're seeing something different because I'm speaking to them as a human being. And this was one of the big shifts for B, was that the reason that she struggled so much with the traditional therapies was that she was seen as a patient. And I understand that, but B would sit with her arms crossed, very defensive the whole way. And what I see with the young people that come through my front door is that they light up. And I will say, I'm not talking to your intellect here, because as is often the case, a lot of these, and they are young girls mainly, I have worked with young boys actually, is that they're usually very bright. So I'm trying to bypass the intellect. And I use a lot of metaphor, and they like metaphor because it colours, it's a picture that you're painting. And they come up with their own metaphors. And I've got my equivalent of a snow globe, which is a jar full of sand and water, so sand from the beach. And we just have that in the middle of the table and we talk about that. And on average, 3-4 conversations, and the parents are saying, what have you done? Because I feel full of hope now that my child will recover. And yes, I then also work with young adults who have been referred, or give Rebecca a call, or they found me again on the Beat website. And I had one number of sessions. I tend to just block 4 sessions and say, look, use it how you feel is right for you. And this young woman she was in her mid-20s, and she'd had binge eating disorder since she was 8. And after the second call, we didn't talk about food. We just talked about our experience and thought and who we are before all of the stories we've created about ourselves. And by the second session, she was done. She said to me, we continued, we had another couple of sessions spaced out, but she said, I haven't binged since the second session. I haven't even felt like it. It's not even crossed my mind. I've even, she said one of the things that she used to do was volunteer to go out to Tesco or wherever when everybody had the munchies at kind of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And for her, she would always do that because it meant she could binge while she was out and come back. And she said, I've volunteered to go. I've just not felt like getting anything myself. And she said, and I've not had to do anything. It's just happened. And I remember her saying, it's like magic. I don't know what's happened. But it is a waking up, isn't it? That's it. And I find that for some of the young people, it's more deep rooted. But they certainly see it. And the more that they look in this direction, then obviously it just becomes more obvious to them. I've been working with a young woman who kind of came to me with every type of tool that she had to try and not feel her feelings. So everything from pulling her hair to self-harm to eating or not eating. And we had a second session today, and it's like all of these habits are just falling away. And she's getting a glimpse of, other random stuff that she's done that she didn't even realize she was doing, she's now not doing. And something that you said, Giles, about the space as well. We sat on the beach today on the stones looking at the sea, and it was like dipping in and out of this conversation. And I forgot to tell you, I haven't done that since I last saw you. And but there's and I think here's the thing. They know that I see them as well. I don't necessarily say it. Sometimes I do because that feels right to say. But I don't see that there's anything that needs fixing. It's just a reminder of, that's thought. That's made up. That's a story. And it makes sense that you made that story up and believed it. But actually, you know what? You don't have to do that. And I think that's the difference for young people that have been through traditional NHS. And I've nothing against it. And it certainly was Bee's experience that she was seen as broken, and you're going to have to manage this for the rest of your life. And I guess, one mum sent me a message on social media yesterday, I think it was. And she called us givers of hope. And that was just really nice. I remember doing a workshop with Mary up in Leeds, in Halifax, and it was for carers, and there was a husband there at the day, and he just said to me, he was a bit arms crossed, you know, what am I going to learn here? And he just said to me at the start of the day, I've just got one question for you, is recovery possible? And I just said yes. That's all I said. I didn't elaborate, I just said yes. And I said, just listen today. And at the end of the day, he just came up and he gave me a big hug and he said, recovery is possible.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I hope did that answer good?
Okay. Well, I can't believe how quickly that's gone. Thank you all. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Giles. But thank you, everybody who came along. And I will post on the Facebook group when Mary is recovered, and we'll reschedule that one as well. But yeah, just everybody unmute yourself and just say goodbye. And yeah, sending you lots and lots of love. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim, for
Nice to
hosting.
meet you all.
Bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye now.